Welcome to Sewing Anastasia. Today we'll be sewing our ball gown. This is the ball gown that we pattern drafted in our last video. So let's start sewing. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is serge all of our edges. You can bias bind the edges, you can French seam the edges, but I'm going to serge all my edges. Okay, so our second step is going to be sewing together our princess lines. So I'm going to start with my center front bodice and then my side front. And I'm going to lay these on top of each other, just make sure they line up. And then remember, when you're sewing, you're going to be sewing your princess line and then you're going to be sewing that line all the way up. So that's going to give us our volume in our skirt. Okay, so now that you have your side front panel sewn to your center front, it should look something like this. You can see how big and dramatic this is after just sewing 3 pieces of it together. So you're gonna have a beautiful dramatic ball gown. Okay, so next we are going to sew together the side seams. We're gonna do the exact same thing we did to our princess line in the front. So let's sew it up at 1/2 inch. Now that you have your side seams sewn together, you should have 5 pieces sewn together, and it should look something like this. You can see you're going to be nice and dramatic when you wear it. So let's sew our last panel, which is going to be our center back panel. And so we're going to sew our side back to our side back seam here. Okay, so now you should have all 7 panels sewn together. It should look something like this. And you can see if you put it on, it's going to be super dramatic. So now you can choose if you want to iron your seams open, if you want to iron them towards the back and top stitch them. Now you could bias bind them. There's a lot of different finishing techniques that you can use. I'm just going to iron mine towards the center back, and then we're going to put the zipper in. Okay, so now that you've sewn in your zipper and you have all your seams done, your dress should definitely look something like this. Next, we just have a few steps left. We're going to put on some straps, some appliques, and we're going to hem it with some horsehair. Okay, so our next step is going to be sewing in the horsehair on the hem. And the horsehair is really important because it gives your hem a beautiful flowing wave to it. And you can purchase horsehair anywhere from 1/2 inch to, I think, like 12 inches wide. So it depends how stiff you want your hem to be. Okay, so I have my piece of horsehair and I have my fabric. And you want to place your horsehair on the edge of your fabric on the right-hand side. And you're going to sew as close to the edge as you can. I recommend about 1/8 to 1/4 inch. Okay, so now that I've sewn that on, it should look something like this. So we're going to want to flip it towards the inside of your garment and then we're gonna stitch on the very edge of our horsehair. Okay, so once you've sewn on your 25 yards of horsehair, your hem should look nice and beautiful like this with all of the horsehair in it. Okay, so if you haven't done bias binding before, I'm going to go over it real quick for you. So you basically want to cut strips of fabric that are 1.25 inches wide, but the key is making sure that they are on a 45-degree angle. So we're going to sew together our bias binding strips, and you want to make sure that they're overlapping like they are right here. Okay, so I'm ready to sew my bias binding on, and what I want to do is sew it onto the wrong side of my fabric first at 1/4 inch. I also want to make sure that my zipper here is not open and that it's pushed in and flat. Okay, so now that we have that step done, we want to take our bias binding and fold it in another 1/4 inch and then flip it down so that you're covering that last stitch. And now we're gonna go back and we're gonna sew 1/8 inch or 1/16 inch real close on the edge of the bias binding, and that's gonna be on the outside of your dress. Okay, so now you've got your bias binding on and you're wondering, what do I do with these little flippy ends? Real easy, you're just gonna cut off your extra and you're gonna fold them and flip them to the back of your dress and sew them down. So we are almost done with our dress. Our last step is gonna be putting on our straps. I chose to put some beaded appliques for our straps. So what I did was I pre-made a long strap that's finished on each side, and then I hand sewed my appliques onto it. So now I want them in the middle of the shoulder, and so what you want to do for this is just pin it into place. This piece is actually going to run down the front of my dress, and I'm going to sew this down. I'm going to top stitch it on, and then I want to do another detail down here. I think I'm going to do a bow. Okay, so our front straps are sewn on and we want to do our back next. I'm going to do my straps crisscross. So I've pinned them to the dress where I want them to crisscross. Note that crisscross straps need to be sewn on an angle. So I've marked them and now I'll cut them off about 1/2 inch, turn it under 1/4 inch, and then put your strap inside of your dress, and then you can top stitch it on. Okay, so we have one little step left, and it's going to be the hook and eye right above the zipper, and you just want to make sure your dress doesn't come undone when you're wearing it. Thanks for watching Sewing Anastasia today. I hope you had fun pattern drafting your ball gown. It's going to look something like this when you're done sewing it. If you found today's video helpful, make sure you hit the like button. And if you want to see more of our awesome videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you can check them all out.